The Galactic Empire's broadcast echoed across 1,000 occupied systems, its triumphant tone slicing through static and fear alike. A sleek silver alien in ornate command armor smirked into the camera, his voice brimming with mockery. "Let it be known," he declared, "that the so-called Terran Defense Force now sends women to do a soldier's job. Snipers, they claim. Marksmen. Yet they hesitate. They miss. They cry." The Imperials, watching, laughed. In dim command tents and glass towers, their scorn spread like wildfire. Tactical advisors nodded smugly. Foot soldiers exchanged grins. Even Admiral Kael'vor, Supreme Commander of the Eastern Galactic Front, watched with a sneer curled into his mandibles. "This is who we fight," he said, turning to his lieutenants. "We'll take Earth in a month." But on a cold rock floating on the outskirts of the Trillium system, far from any comforting spotlight, a single Terran shuttle coasted silently toward the ruins of a fallen communications array. Inside sat one woman, alone, surrounded by crates of weapons and a darkness that welcomed her. Sergeant Lyra Cade adjusted the strap on her matte black rifle case. No unit patch. No identifying marks. Just a dull metal tag tucked into her collar. 3rd Ghost Recon. Earth's official stance was that no such unit existed. The interior cabin lights flickered red, then dimmed to nothing as her insertion zone neared. She exhaled once, long and slow, feeling her pulse settle beneath skin worn taut from years of war. No speeches, no ceremony. Just her and the silence. 3 minutes, the AI pilot announced. Drop zone prepped. Atmospheric winds nominal. Terrain unstable. Enemies probable. Lyra's eyes didn't move. "Understood," she said quietly, voice devoid of emotion. She slid the bolt of her rifle open, then closed it with a click that sounded final. Like a sealed fate. Behind her comm was a storm. Earth had lost 6 outposts in 30 days. High-value operatives vanished mid-transmission. The Empire's scorched earth tactics were pushing Terran lines back faster than the brass could draw new ones. In a war room buried deep beneath the Rockies, a classified directive had emerged: remove Kael'vor. Not with an orbital strike. Not with an army. With one bullet. They sent Lyra Cade. She didn't question it. She never had. Orders were structure, and structure gave her purpose. The shuttle doors opened to a sharp wind and jagged peaks of metal twisted by time and battle. Lyra stepped out, her boots crunching over shattered alloy plates and glass. She moved low and fast, rifle slung tight against her spine. In seconds, the shuttle was gone, just like her name, scrubbed from every database outside her team's memory. Ghost. 30 kilometers away, behind a shielded ridge and layers of alien infrastructure, sat the central warbase of Kael'vor's ground force. Lyra had studied its every blueprint, every camera feed intercepted from satellites, every breath the general took on public record. She could chart his routines from memory. The shift of his guards at dusk, his preference for drinking alone near the east window, his solitary habit of polishing his ceremonial blade before each campaign. She didn't hate him. She didn't feel at all. Feeling got you killed. Precision saved lives. She made camp inside a collapsed hull, once an Imperial drone tank, now a rusted shell open to the stars. She nestled inside, invisible to satellites, her movements slow and methodical. She assembled her sniper rifle not by memory, but by rhythm. Each piece fit like an extension of her. The barrel whispered into place. The scope kissed the receiver. The bolt locked like a promise. In the stillness, memories floated like dust motes. Her first shot at 17, through the throat of a raider who had taken her unit hostage. A bullet fired not in anger, but necessity. Her commanding officer never forgot the calm in her face when the shot landed. Neither did Lyra. It was the day she realized silence could be louder than war. By morning, she was gone again, moving through blackened craters and valleys carved by plasma fire. Camouflaged netting draped her like shadow. She moved only when the satellites blinked elsewhere. The Empire wasn't stupid, just arrogant. The arrogance showed in their patterns. Patrols too casual. Sensors placed only on high ground, assuming no one would dare crawl through the marshes below. But Lyra didn't walk roads. She carved her own. 12 hours in, she reached the ridge overlooking Kael'vor's base. From here, the entire facility spread out like a steel tumor, pulsing with transport lights and shield generators. The general's tower stood in the center, black, vertical, proud. Its eastern face had a balcony. Decorative. Vulnerable. She waited until dusk. The scope of her rifle swept across entry points, tracking guards' routines. A few lazy, a few alert. One stopped to light a cigar. She noted him. Weak link. Lyra tapped into the base's outer signal traffic with a narrowband receiver, listening for movement. Nothing out of the ordinary. Still, her instincts flared like they always did before it got bad. That night, she didn't sleep. She calibrated wind readings, adjusted scope compensation, recorded movement cycles. By the time Kael'vor appeared on the balcony, she had already been waiting 28 hours in a sniper's crawl, motionless except for the rise and fall of her breath. He stood framed by alien dusk, silhouetted in pale red light. Laughing. She saw his face through the scope. Relaxed. Mocking. The same man who'd executed prisoners on broadcast. Who'd reduced an entire refugee fleet to debris for strategic morale. Her finger tightened, then eased. Not yet. There was movement near his chambers. Unusual. 2 guards positioned closer than usual. A third. New uniform. Lyra's eye twitched behind the scope. They knew something. She slid backward from the overlook, her rifle still locked on target through a remote sight. Slowly, she extracted a drone the size of her palm from her satchel, launching it with a flick into the air. It coasted silent as breath, feeding back heat signatures. Inside the command tower, 2 heat blooms not on any manifest. One sat still, 2 still. A decoy? The other paced. Lyra muttered. Body double. She recalibrated. The real Kael'vor wouldn't change his pattern unless he had a reason. Someone had tipped them off. Back inside her hide, she checked her receiver again. One anomalous ping. A broadcast. Buried in encryption, but human-made. Coordinates embedded. A trap. Or a message. She input the code. A single line appeared on her cracked receiver. They know. He moves at dawn. 1 shot. You'll know when. X. Only 2 people on Earth knew her frequency. One was dead. The other wouldn't risk contact unless the mission was on the edge of compromise. X meant the mission had changed. Lyra stared at the dark tower. She waited. The Empire celebrated too soon. By morning, a new transport arrived. Cloaked. Unauthorized by standard logs. Lyra watched it descend near the far edge of the base, cloaked in the shadow of a plasma turbine. From it stepped Kael'vor himself. No decoy, no pomp. Surrounded by elites. Moving underground. She followed his path through heat maps, scanning the compound until she found it. A secondary operations room shielded on all sides, but with one structural flaw, a maintenance shaft venting to the surface once every 6 hours. Exactly 3 seconds of exposure. She marked the timing. Adjusted for wind, heat shimmer, and gravitational pulse. Set her watch. 30 minutes to the shot. She used the time to breathe, her heartbeat matching the rhythm she had drilled into herself for over a decade. She remembered her trainer's voice. Snipers don't take life. They correct chaos. The world held its breath with her. The vent opened. A narrow flash of light. Kael'vor stepped into frame for exactly 3 seconds. Lyra fired. The sound was a whisper, a wind-borne kiss that vanished into silence. She didn't watch the impact. She didn't have to. Seconds later, Imperial comms erupted with static and screaming. Her receiver lit up. Primary target down. Chaos confirmed. Repeat, he's down. She packed the rifle in under 10 seconds. Ghost protocol. She'd be 30 clicks gone before they even knew where the shot came from. But as she slipped from her hide, she paused. The Empire had mocked her. Dismissed her. Brushed her off as a myth wrapped in an insult. They wouldn't anymore. She looked once more through her scope, not at the compound, but beyond it. Toward the horizon where 1,000 other threats waited. One bullet didn't end a war. But it sent a message. And she wasn't done speaking. The death of Kael'vor sent tremors through the Empire's war machine. Within minutes of the confirmed kill, regional transmissions stuttered and changed tone, replacing confident proclamations with tight-lipped damage control. The Supreme Commander's face, once a symbol of brutal efficiency, was now scrubbed from every channel, his absence more deafening than any declaration of mourning. Inside the warbase where he fell, chaos was swift and unrelenting. Officers scrambled to reassert chain of command, only to find their hierarchies riddled with mistrust. Dozens were arrested. Others fled, fearing assassination. What Lyra Cade had done with one shot was not just kill a general, it was to fracture belief. She hadn't aimed at a man. She had aimed at myth. And yet, while the Empire reeled, Earth's command remained silent. Lyra stayed buried in the outskirts of the conflict, moving only by night, keeping low through ridges of scorched terrain. She hadn't expected an extraction. Ghost operatives never did. Her protocols were clear. Blend, bury, vanish. But something gnawed at her edges, an unease that didn't stem from fear, but instinct. She had felt it before, in the deserts of Virex 9, the ruins of Theta Core, that breathless moment before a trap snapped closed. 2 days passed. She watched the Empire shift from mourning to movement. A surge of redeployments spread across the system. Instead of retreating, they hardened. Kael'vor's death had not stalled the war, it had shifted it. And that shift felt organized. Lyra intercepted a series of encrypted bursts from an abandoned relay grid, a spiderweb of signals too precise to be background noise. She triangulated the source, filtering through static and ghost channels until a recognizable structure emerged. Imperial Black Command, a unit whispered about even in her circles. Not frontline warriors, but architects, strategists, puppeteers. The signals originated from a world not marked on any stellar chart she had studied, Varnak's Reach. An artificial moon orbiting a gas giant, shrouded in nebulae and sensor scatter. It was there the signals gathered. It was there they reacted, not to Kael'vor's death, but to something else entirely. A name. Project Spectre. It wasn't listed in any of Earth's files. But Lyra found fragments. Traces buried in corrupted data left behind by recon units long dead. And in each instance, the word Spectre was followed by 2 other phrases, Initiate Phase 4 and Human Variable Neutralize. That was when she realized, Kael'vor had never been the true threat. He was a weapon, not the hand wielding it. Spectre was the hand. And it feared her. It took her 4 days to reach Varnak's Reach. Disguised in the shell of a downed Empire courier pod, she drifted among salvage traffic, a ghost among debris fields. The automated beacons accepted the wreckage signature without question. The Empire, bloated with arrogance, had always assumed humans were blunt instruments, incapable of nuance. Her arrival was uneventful. A magnetized clamp pulled the pod into the hangar bay of a vast Imperial structure shaped like a crescent blade. The walls gleamed with obsidian alloy. No guards. Just drones and shadow. She moved like smoke, silent and unseen. The rifle stayed disassembled in her pack. This wasn't a mission of bullets. Not yet. This was reconnaissance. And the silence within the base was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of calculation. What she found beneath the facility's facade chilled her. Rows of humans, soldiers, scientists, civilians, held in stasis. Not killed. Studied. Their neural scans streamed across monitors. Their memories dissected like code. Empire scientists moved among them like archivists in a museum. Cold. Detached. One even chuckled while reviewing a memory stream of a Terran mother shielding her child during an orbital strike. Lyra's hands clenched. Not from rage. Rage could be used against you. She breathed it out. Then she saw the wall. A mural carved into alloy and obsidian, stretching across 20 meters. It wasn't just decoration, it was prophecy. Empire glyphs spiraled out from a single central image, a Terran sniper aiming skyward, her rifle bleeding into stars. Beneath it, the glyph translated loosely to, "The one who strikes from silence shall unmake us." Lyra stared. The Empire didn't mock her kind because they feared nothing. They mocked because they were terrified. Not of the masses, but of her. Project Spectre wasn't a weapon. It was a purge. And she was the purge's target. She moved deeper, following secured corridors and piggybacking access from passing drones. The further she went, the colder the air became, recycled through layers of forgotten systems. Then the doors opened onto a chamber unlike any she had seen. No guards. Just one being. He stood with his back to her, tall and skeletal, wearing no armor, only a robe that shimmered like oil. His skin was translucent, revealing pulsing veins of blue energy beneath. Around him floated dozens of holographic projections. Maps, star charts, snippets of intercepted Terran transmissions. He turned his head slightly. "You're earlier than I calculated." Lyra didn't flinch. "You expected me? I designed the scenario so you'd come." Kale Vor was expendable. His death, though useful, was always intended. "You wanted me to kill him?" The being, its voice now sharper, metallic, nodded once. "You are the anomaly. The unpredictable factor. We don't fear human armies. We fear what they don't predict. You." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "You built this place to study us. To understand how silence kills louder than sound. How belief breaks algorithms. You humans don't follow equations. You follow ghosts. And that makes you dangerous." She stepped forward slowly. "Then why not just kill me?" He didn't smile. He didn't seem to know how, but his tone carried amusement. "Because understanding you is more valuable than ending you. For now." Her eyes flicked across the room. No weapons, but dozens of servers and relay points. Everything he knew, everything Spectre was, existed in this place. A single thermal charge could erase it. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "But you won't destroy it. Not yet." "Why?" "Because part of you wants to know what we've seen. The truth beneath your myths. The edge between legend and extinction." Lyra hated that he wasn't entirely wrong. But she also knew stalling when she heard it. She activated the charge in her left gauntlet. Silent, signal jammed, already ticking down. "I don't need to understand your fear," she said. "I just need you to feel it." The being paused. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. "You won't escape the blast." "I'm not here to escape." The walls hummed. The servers sparked. His voice fractured with panic. "You're insane." "No. Just human." The room lit in white. But there was no pain. Not yet. Lyra opened her eyes. She stood in darkness. No walls. No floor. Just space. A voice whispered, "You must understand." It was hers. But older. Worn. Echoing. She was seeing what he saw, what he had implanted in her mind in those final moments before detonation. Not a trick. A message. Images flashed. Thousands of planets. Wars not yet fought. Humanity's future, teetering on the edge of extinction and ascendance. A glimpse not of defeat, but of fear. The Empire didn't just fear humanity. They feared becoming like them. She gasped awake in ash. The room was gone. The structure collapsing. Sirens screamed in alien tongues. She crawled through smoke and ruin, her body screaming in protest. But she was alive. The servers weren't. And neither was the architect of Spectre. She had destroyed their blind spot. But now they would see her clearly. And the war was about to become something else entirely. Ash clung to her lungs like memory. Lyra Cade dragged herself through the wreckage, muscles torn between fire and numbness, her body betraying the silence she needed to survive. The collapse of the Spectre facility had buried more than the Empire's secrets. It had sealed a message inside her that still hadn't fully unraveled. And time was against her. Her extraction was never planned. No one came for ghosts, Not after the mission was complete. Yet, someone had intercepted her fading life signature, a Terran blacksite frigate disguised as a civilian hauler. She remembered the moment they pulled her from the rubble, blurred lights, voices trembling with disbelief. She wasn't supposed to be alive. She wasn't supposed to return. 2 weeks passed in silence. They patched her body, rebuilt fractured bones with synthetic calcium mesh, grafted skin where fire had claimed too much. But they couldn't touch the memory. They couldn't understand what she brought back, because she hadn't told them. Lyra sat in a dim room aboard the frigate Phantom's Reach, eyes locked on the terminal screen, fingers hovering over keys she hadn't touched in days. She replayed the last moments before the blast again and again. His voice, his warning, the strange flash of foresight that wasn't her own. She had destroyed the servers, killed the Spectre architect. But some part of what he'd seen, what he feared, still lived in her. Like a spark waiting for air. She drafted a report, then deleted it. Truth wasn't what Command needed. It was what the Resistance needed. Not orders. Not plans. A message. That's when she made the decision. She would vanish again, but this time, not into silence. Into defiance. Lyra left the frigate under pretense of reassignment. She hacked the transit logs. Scrubbed her departure records. The only trace of her heading was a single pulse, sent deep into Resistance comms. One word, Spectre, nullified. Then she disappeared into the edge systems, where the Empire's grip remained absolute and its paranoia even sharper. There, on the moonless world of Gariel's End, she found her next breath. It wasn't a battlefield. It was a slaughterhouse disguised as a mining outpost. Human civilians forced into servitude under Empire control, stripped of language and identity. Entire generations conditioned to forget they were ever free. Lyra moved among them like a ghost once more. She didn't speak. She listened. Observed. She wasn't there to inspire. She was there to understand how far the Empire's rot had spread. The truth was worse than intel suggested. The overseers, non-commissioned Empire loyalists, enforced compliance with neural shackles that sparked with each disobedient thought. The workers wore collars, not uniforms. Children were taught only numbers, not names. The Empire hadn't just conquered Gariel's End. It had rewritten it. But the Empire had grown complacent. They assumed the myth of the sniper had died with Kael'vor. They believed no one could breach a system this deep, this tightly bound. Lyra saw their overconfidence as a weapon, and she would load it like a bullet. It began with a single shot. She chose the overseer known as Lothan Krek, the one who laughed when a child collapsed from exhaustion, who once executed a worker for stuttering. He made his rounds every morning at dawn, always pausing at the central tower to sneer at the horizon as if daring the galaxy to defy him. One morning, his sneer froze. Then his skull exploded into red mist. No sound preceded it. No warning followed. Just one shot. And a message burned into the dirt beside his corpse. You are not unseen. The reaction was immediate. Panic. Surveillance sweeps. Imperial scout drones scoured every ridge and crevice within 50 kilometers. But Lyra was gone before they arrived, her perch already cold, the bullet casing embedded in a rock like a warning sigil. The next day, another shot. A supply officer known for short-changing rations collapsed while inspecting a shipment manifest. The bullet had entered through the nape of his neck, exited through his pride. This time, there was no message. Just silence. That terrified them more. The workers began to whisper again, soft at first, only behind closed doors. Then in common spaces. Then openly. They didn't know her name, but they knew her intent. She wasn't a legend from Earth. She was here. Watching. Striking. The Resistance hadn't sent her. But she was doing what no army could, reintroducing fear to the fearless. Command caught wind, of course. One of the few still trusted with her location, Captain Reyna Sol, sent encrypted pulses demanding contact. Lyra ignored them. The moment she answered, this mission would no longer be hers. The third shot came a week later. This time, Lyra didn't aim for death. She shot the communications tower at the far edge of the mining perimeter. One bullet, tungsten core, straight through the signal array's stabilizer coil. It didn't explode. It just collapsed, soundless and slow, like a tower kneeling. Within minutes, the system-wide net dipped into blackout. And into that silence, Lyra sent her message. A single-wave, unsecured transmission blasted across Empire, Resistance, and civilian frequencies alike. No encryption. No deception. Just truth. Her voice was calm. Steady. You believe silence is submission. But silence is where snipers live. Where ghosts move. Where empires end. A pause. I killed Kale Vor. I dismantled Project Spectre. I walked through your blind spot and left it burning. Another pause. You trained your crosshairs on human weakness. You mocked our unpredictability. You feared our women most of all. You made a mistake. Then her tone shifted. I am not alone. The feed ended. No coordinates. No demands. Just the bullet of a broadcast, leaving only speculation in its wake. The galaxy shuddered. In Resistance territories, the message sparked a resurgence. Recruits surged. Dissenters stepped forward. But more importantly, commanders began re-evaluating tactics, opening their ears to the unconventional, the unpredictable, the female. On the Empire's side, panic gripped their intelligence corps. They deployed Spectre remnants, clandestine hunter units bred for eliminating anomalies. But even they couldn't agree if Lyra Cade was still alive, or merely a figure resurrected to spread chaos. That was her greatest weapon now: doubt. She didn't need to pull the trigger every time. Sometimes, she just needed them to wonder if she would. But not all doubt was hers to control. Captain Reyna Sol, frustrated with silence, dispatched a covert team to track Lyra. Against orders, they followed patterns, locations, times, ballistic angles. Eventually, they found a cave system deep in the obsidian cliffs of Dracos Verge. Inside, they discovered makeshift shelters, spent casings, nutrient packs. And one final message, etched into the rock wall in laser-scored script. I am not fighting a war. I am making you question it. By the time they arrived, she was already gone. Where no one could say. But a week later, an Empire admiral en route to a military summit died when his transport vessel's viewport shattered from a sniper round fired from a nearby moon. A shot calculated across gravitational drift and atmospheric refraction. One shot. One message. She was still out there. And the rules of the war had changed. Again. The air inside the High Council chamber of Zar Prime was cold, not by design, but by consequence. Beneath the polished obsidian floors and the weightless chandeliers crafted from star-born crystal, a chill lingered that even the climate regulators couldn't chase away. It wasn't temperature that disturbed the gathered elite of the Galactic Empire. It was silence. Not the respectful, contemplative kind. This silence had teeth. On a holoslab in the center of the room, the frozen image of a human woman aiming a rifle played on a loop. Every 12 seconds, the frame paused on the moment just before impact, the precise alignment of eye, breath, and barrel. Each time it replayed, the tension in the chamber deepened. 17 confirmed kills, one of the admirals muttered. Not including what she did at Varnak's reach. Spectre's collapse was supposed to end this. She was meant to die there. And yet she didn't, another said, eyes narrowed. She walked out and lit a fuse across half our border systems. Supreme Strategist Talvex shifted his weight, fingers pressed tightly together. She's not just killing officers. She's killing certainty. Every sniper round she fires, every message she leaves, it unravels decades of doctrine. She's one woman, someone snapped. We have armies. We have fleets. And she's made them irrelevant, Talvex said flatly. We built our superiority on patterns, on predictability. But she isn't a soldier. She's a disruption. The word hung in the air like a curse. Across the galaxy, Lyra Cade had become a phenomenon. Not just a sniper, not even a resistance figure, something more volatile. Children in border colonies whispered her name during forbidden games. Civilians in occupied zones scrawled her sigil, a cracked bullet casing, onto alley walls. Empire captains altered landing protocols out of paranoia she'd found their route. Officers were refusing high-profile assignments out of fear they'd be next. Lyra wasn't hunted anymore. She hunted. And she chose her targets not for rank, but for message. A bureaucrat who falsified resource allocations to starving outposts. A genetics advisor overseeing coercive breeding programs. A propaganda chief who forced children to recite loyalty hymns under threat of reconditioning. 1 bullet each. No missed shots. No explanations. Just one phrase sent across unsecured comms after every mission. I see you. The phrase had evolved into something primal within Empire ranks. Officers began requesting bunkers with no windows. Soldiers started wearing reflective armor plates over their backs. Some even wore helmets while sleeping. Superstition bloomed like fungus in the cracks of authority. The sniper didn't just kill. She watched. And the idea of being watched, truly seen, terrified them. Back on Zar Prime, Talvex dismissed the holoslab with a sharp gesture. We must accept the truth. Cade is not just a rogue agent. She is a doctrine in herself. And unless we rewrite ours, we will keep bleeding. General Lauren scoffed. You want us to shift centuries of military strategy because one Terran woman. Not because of her, Talvex interrupted. Because we've become predictable. Complacent. Cade is a mirror to our failure. No one spoke after that. They all knew he was right. Meanwhile, Lyra was already moving toward her next objective, not across a battlefield, but through the glittering sanctuaries of Empire bureaucracy. She had infiltrated the administrative cradle of the Empire's outer rim, Tyran Hold, a city orbiting the gas world of Newell. It wasn't guarded by soldiers or turrets, but by layers of social order and surveillance, too orderly, too polished, too sure of itself to consider an intruder among its elite. Lyra became one of them. Hair dyed to the silver favored by Tyran's aristocracy. Implants masked her neural ID. Her gait shifted from ghost to diplomat. She moved through marble halls and glass corridors with perfect posture, just another functionary discussing planetary tariffs and species integration quotas. She didn't need to break anything. She only needed to. And what she saw turned her blood cold. Buried deep in the logistics of resource management and population stabilization lay a new project. Not Spectre. Something newer. Meaner. Built in Spectre's ruins. Initiative Veil. It wasn't a military campaign. It was a silencing. Entire colonies marked not for eradication, but erasure. History, genetics, cultural data, wiped. Assimilated. Made to forget themselves entirely. No explosions. No headlines. Just sterilized obedience. They were going to remove resistance not by fear, but by forgetfulness. The ultimate counter to Lyra Cade wasn't to kill her. It was to make her irrelevant. She couldn't inspire what no one remembered. Lyra knew she didn't have the firepower to stop Veil. Not alone. But she had something more potent. Proof. And precision. She left Tyran Hold without a ripple. Returned to the stars. Vanished before her face could be tracked, before her DNA left trace. What she took with her was more than data. It was the Empire's next war, wrapped in bureaucracy and delivered in silence. She crafted her response not in words, but in death. Her target, Director Omis Kell, the project lead for Initiative Veil. He lived aboard a solar drifting palace called the Lattice, surrounded by light arrays that disrupted enemy targeting systems and randomized positioning every 90 minutes. Unassailable. Unless you didn't aim for the target. Lyra waited. Timed her approach not to the man's routine, but to the pulse of the solar flares that powered the palace. She knew there would be one moment, exactly 3.7 seconds, when the flares would blind the light arrays and the ship would be momentarily visible. She set her rifle 3 days in advance on a rotating asteroid with precise orbital drift. Calculated windless arc factored flare distortion. She didn't pull the trigger until her breath synced with the quietest part of her heartbeat. The bullet traveled 6,000 kilometers. struck Omi's Kell through the eye while he sipped lumfruit wine. The flare passed. The lattice shimmered invisible again. The Empire claimed he died of aneurysm. But Lyra left a message inside his neural implant, one that would upload the moment his heart stopped. And it did. Across half a dozen intelligence networks, a burst of encrypted files tore through the silence. Evidence of Initiative Veil. Signed, LC. The Empire's denial collapsed. Now everyone knew. Lyra Cade wasn't just a sniper. She was the shadow of accountability. They couldn't kill her because they couldn't find her. They couldn't discredit her because her bullets told the truth. And worst of all, they couldn't ignore her anymore. She had become the Empire's new fear. A sniper who didn't shoot for blood, but for meaning. Her legend stretched beyond planets, across languages, through ideologies. Resistance cells quoted her without knowing her name. Children in occupied territories carved her sigil in snow. Even within the Empire, rumors whispered that she didn't miss because she didn't shoot unless fate itself aligned behind her trigger. And somewhere, deep within the farthest rim systems, Lyra sat atop a rusted communication tower in a decommissioned war zone. The stars pulsed overhead like old wounds healing. Her rifle rested beside her, quiet. She was watching, waiting. Because the next shot wasn't about revenge. It was about reminding the galaxy of one enduring truth. The smallest voice in the silence is often the one that echoes forever.